Well, the last time I talked about Wheel of Time went swimmingly, so I thought, hey, why not do it again? So here's some thoughts on Season 2's Wheel of Time, and if I didn't upset you too much with the previous video, stay a while and listen. Okay, first of all, Lan and Moraine, I have some thoughts. It's the part of Season 2 that I've been struggling with the most, but now with the reveal in the penultimate episode, I have a better handle of what the writers are doing and can better evaluate what I think and feel about it. First, the decision to supposedly still Moraine at the end of Season 1 was baffling to me. It's such a dramatic departure from the books. The question was, why? Why are they doing this? It seems such an unnecessary change, especially because it seems to make redundant a later plot point, which called into question whether that would even occur at all. Now I would say, I like where we end up, I like the destination, I don't like how we got there. So the first and most obvious reason why they made this change was simply to demonstrate the power of the Chosen, the Forsaken. The book Chosen tended to work a little more in the shadows until later, and seems that the show is bringing the thunder right away with its villains. So this shows just how overwhelmingly power Ishmael was, compared to Moraine, who is very strong in the one power, that she's helpless before him. Now it's been revealed that she was not stilled. She was cut off from the source with a weave that they did not know and did not understand from the past. But because it was a male weave, none of the Aes Sedai could see it. This I like. One, for the little clues that were left along the way that she was not suicidal, and that Lan is able to figure it out doing his order thing. Great. Furthermore, this ability is very important to the rest of the series. So this is a very visual, visceral way of dumping that information on the viewer. Great. So it's a nice setup with good foreshadowing and a nice reveal, and establishes some absolutely essential information on how the magic system works. I still do not like what they've done to the Lan and Moraine relationship. That was a struggle to watch. I'm struggling to understand what we gain by vastly changing that relationship to be petty, I would say, actually. I know they've said that Moraine is going through great issues having been cut off from the source, but the "we were never equal" line, I think it seems odd to me that Lan would even seek that kind of validation in the first place. I see a lot of the Lord of the Rings parallels in the first book especially, and to me this is like Aragorn seeking Gandalf's approval for whether or not they are on equal terms, and then Gandalf saying to Aragorn, "We were never equal." It's like, I guess. But that's not really my view of what those characters were like. To me, it's the weakest part of the adaptation so far. I understand the show is wanting to demonstrate that Moraine is going through a lot. However, especially when she arrives at her home country and interacting with her sister, she's just deeply unpleasant. But easily the hardest change in characterization is the Amrylin Seat herself. It was a rough go in Season 1. Season 2 has done her no favor. She got the Gil-galad treatment from Rings of Power. We seem to be having trouble representing beleaguered but otherwise well-meaning leaders. The TV series Amrylin does not come across as a competent leader. This is unfortunate because, without giving away too much, one of the great tragedies of the series is watching a competent leader being brought low through the selfish ambition of others, and you think, well, wouldn't it have been nice to have a competent leader in charge? This Amrylin will not be missed. Nobody will look back on her reign and think, oh, what a great leader she was. No more than if you came out of the Rings of Power and thought to yourself, yeah, that Gil-galad seemed like a great leader to me. And if anyone says otherwise,
tell him he's dreaming.
The show wants drama, the show wants conflict. The Lan and Moraine rough patch at least has the saving grace of having a reasonably good reveal. I cannot say goodbye fast enough with this Amrylin. The second problem I would have with the adaptation thus far is breaking it up into too many plots. Matt has been entirely sidelined. Now, I'd be curious in the comments if you have a better solution, given the fact that an actor walked off the set, it would seem. How do you deal with a character to tie up Season 1 with that in mind? Despite the many diverging paths, everyone seems to be converging on Falme, as they should. But really, he's been kicking his heels in prison, and then Sir not appearing in this show thus far. So for context, the show has taken one plot and split it into 3, and has really time for none of them. In the book, Matt, Perrin, and Rand are all together. And so we get the Rand and Selene storyline, kind of like we are getting in the TV series, but it's during the hunt for the horn. So we do get the hunt for the horn with Perrin, but it just doesn't feature that prominently because not that much time can be devoted to it. Nonetheless, I am pleased to see the Selene Rand plotline just morphed into a different mode. It just took us a little while to get there. And so by separating these plot lines, to me, it feels like the same problem Rings of Power ran into, which is there simply is not enough time to tell all these stories all at once. And so there's a cost to this. And the cost early on was Rand's story is hardly told at all. I think in these later episodes, we are getting the Great Hunt Rand story just separated out from the actual hunt. So I'm more on board as the season has gone on. I did have to laugh a little, though. I was listening to the little recap that they have at the beginning, and there was this odd voiceover that I didn't remember. As it was summing up each individual plot, then it got to Rand, and then it got this.
With Liandrin and Matt. Rand lies in bed with Celine.
And I burst out laughing. It's like, yep, that's pretty much all Rand has been doing for the last 3 episodes, is just lying around with Celine. Somehow Amazon had turned on the English audio description for the visually impaired, but to be fair, we've gotten some more meat to that story since then. Right, so those are the things I've had the most trouble with in this adaptation. Things that I've liked. I've really liked the storyline with the girls in the tower. I mean, it's probably the closest to the book, the most untouched, we could say. Truncated, obviously. But even changes like stretching out how long Nynaeve is in through the Silver Archers. So she's gone for the entire episode and everyone goes away thinking she's dead. There's a reading within the frame of the book in which that is kind of what happens. The way back actually does falter and Nynaeve needs to channel in order to recreate the gate. And so we just elongate that part of the story. I do miss, of course, the scene when Nynaeve finally comes back and she went in when there was only 3 Aes Sedai there. And when she comes back, the whole council is there ready to welcome her in to her new life. I will say the show got me good. They tricked me. I'm usually more alert to a dream within a dream where a character wakes up and turns out, no, they're still within the dream and that requires a second wake up. But when Nynaeve was in the Gates Beyond and when the filmmakers misdirected to make us think that Nynaeve had actually exited out and then had decided to quit the order and was going to leave the tower, my mind was racing because at that point in time I'd started to see how the divergent paths could start coming back together again and where we could end up and everyone would be in position to converge on Falme for the final episode. And with Nynaeve leaving the tower, I was like, how do we get to the point with Nynaeve and Egwene down at the coast with the Seanchan? Like, this is such an unnecessary change to the book that makes the writer's life more difficult. Why? And then it turned out, no, she's still in the Gates Beyond. So, well played, you got me. I guess the one benefit I can see so far of having the Moraine-Lan tiff is that it better sells that Nynaeve had actually exited the gate, and it's plausible that she has met Lan on his way back to the tower. I suppose there's another cost to splitting everything up. We could call it the not-so-great hunt. I was watching the show with my brother, and I was asking him what he thought about the hunt that Perrin was on, and he described it as, well, it seems kind of like a boar hunt. And I think that's about right. It doesn't have quite the gravitas and the central placement in this TV series as it did in the book. I mean, the whole book is called The Great Hunt. And I think the framing is missing. It's fine to jump ahead in time in media res and then catch up with time has passed. But lacking the send-off, I think, diminishes the significance of what it is that Perrin is doing. That Perrin is actually part of this mythical, legendary hunt for the horn. We get there eventually in the Rand plotline where they start talking about all these hunters that are heading off to find the horn. This is one of the great ironies within the books is the hunt becomes more and more popular after the horn has already been found and people are still going off to complete this quest. So we eventually got to the significance of what it was that Perrin was doing, but lacking the initial context, I think it fell flat. And then because Perrin has become the vehicle to tell the Seanchan's invasion storyline, really the hunt itself does not feature nearly so prominently. So it's a change. I can live with it, but it is the not-so-great hunt. At this point in the series, it looks like we're probably not going to get portal stones, a simplification, but an understandable one. We already have the waystones. I imagine we will get other methods of fast travel. And so eliminating portal stones it's a pretty weird and funky part of the book, and I love it. But for simplification, it makes sense that that's gone. There's some other amalgamations. The composite character of Elyas / Hurin makes some kind of sense to me. There's a lot of characters in the book. We didn't get Elyas, who's the wolf brother that helps Perrin understand these powers that he has. We didn't get it in season 1. We're now getting it in season 2, but introduced by... I don't even know what his name is on the show. I think they say a name somewhere and I just miss it. So it's like, in my head, that's the composite character. I don't even know. Is he Elyas or Hurin? I don't know. In the book, it's a separate ability, the ability to sniff out violence and have a kind of sense of what happened when people died. And it seems to me that they're combining those two powers. And when you're talking about visions versus dreams, it's an understandable collapse. It looks to me, and I was a little bit afraid for a while that we were going to get a Liandrin Aleida composite character. I really like the motivation that they're adding to Liandrin. I think this is what a good adaptation can do, which is take a character that maybe not as much emphasis was put on the book. I mean, there's so many characters in the book, and Robert Jordan goes into depth of all these different backgrounds and characters, but he doesn't do all of them equally. And someone like Liandrin, we don't know that much about her backstory. And so this adaptation decides to give her a son, which is off-brand for a Red to have any involvement with a man. But when characters are playing against type, that's often where there's some interesting character dynamics can be found. So I like it. And I especially like it more now that it's basically been confirmed that Liandrin is going to be Liandrin, the Black Ajah, and this is not a composite character with Aleida, who I assume now we will get sometime in the future. Because I liked the addition of the sun for her motivation for turning against the light into darkness. But I was suspicious, due to economy of character, they would cut a very important character, Aleida. And of all the characters to cut amongst the Aes Sedai, keeping Liandrin and Aleida separate, I think is extremely important. I enjoyed it before, I enjoy it even more now that I'm confident on that front. If I had to guess at another composite character, it seems to me that Logain is functioning a little bit like Asmodean, a chosen who ends up training Rand. In fact, if I were to make a prediction, I suspect we will not get 13 Forsaken, aka Chosen, for these reasons. 1, film or TV adaptations to reduce runtime very often cut minor characters. And 13 is a lot of villains, except for TV shows that are playing Monster of the Week. But we'll ignore that, because that's rubbish storytelling in my view. Second reason, we see Logain taking the place of Asmodean. Third reason, the show has now tied the breaking of seals to the release of the Forsaken. There are 7 seals, there are 13 Forsaken. Now they could change the number of seals, they could change the number of Forsaken, but are they really going to have a 13 separate reveals? And quite frankly, eliminating Balthamol and Agenor would be very simple, because they basically died about as quickly as they were introduced, and you could account for their later appearances in other ways, I'm sure. We've been introduced to 2. We've had another 2 named. I predict at minimum there will be 7, maximum 10. I doubt there'll be 13. Speaking of training, a going concern of mine right now is that Rand is not getting his sword training. And I really hope that they don't just throw him into battles and, well, you picked up a sword once, so clearly you're going to be Master Swordsman. We finally have Lan connecting back up with Rand, so I'm hopeful that maybe now we'll get that sword training. And no, I do not count the implication that the old man in the asylum is giving Rand tips on sword fighting as a sufficient substitute for actual sword training. He needs to spar. I don't need a lot of time devoted to that. I just need to know this has been going on in the background for months and months at a time. And at this point, it seems like we have run out of time. At least for this season's finale. Rand is going to go in with a final battle with a few tips and tricks he's picked up at the asylum. And that's all. I do like that we kind of got a scene between him and Lan from the book that was at the beginning of The Great Hunt, imported at the end. That's fun. But please, if you're not going to give him some training in season 2, at least do it in season 3. It's a vital skill set of Rand. Give it to him. Also, would it hurt to show a map every now and then? It wouldn't impact non-book readers. But twice I was completely thrown off on where people were. The big one was Perrin, whom I thought was still in the east, and all of a sudden the Xianchan are showing up fighting, which would be about the same thing as thinking you're in Poland and suddenly having your characters show up on the beaches of Spain. It was a big whiplash because I had no idea where the characters were. I'm really liking how they've thought through how to play up the age differential between the Aes Sedai and the rest of the world. It's not very easy or visually obvious obvious to do what Robert Jordan does in text, which is to say that there's a way that the Aes Sedai look, an ageless look. Like, visually, when you're dealing with real human beings who are not Aes Sedai, what does that really look like? Moments like Liandrin and her aged son, or Moraine, as much as I dislike her interactions with her sister, but the younger sister being an elderly woman with a coming-of-age son. These are thoughtful ways of incorporating the ageless idea to visually show this and remind us what's going on. So well done. I think they're doing a marvelous job of demonstrating the awfulness of the Seanchan slavery of the One Power users. Great storytelling there. There's far more that could be said about this adaptation, I'm sure. You can let me know your thoughts down in the comments. But I'm sorry, I'm still enjoying the show.
Dishonor on your whole family.
And maybe more so now that we're kind of getting out of the weeds of some of the splits that were, in my view, unnecessary. Moraine and Lan still end up being iffy on me. I'll have to see where that's going to determine whether I will like it in the end. But aside from that, and especially the Egwene and Nynaeve stuff, really enjoying it. This is an especially busy time of year, so we'll see what I can get out from time to time. So I'll say see you next time, and
Love it.